"But if you take away my voice," said the little mermaid, "what is left for me?" "Your beautiful form, your graceful walk, and your expressive eyes. Surely with these you can enchain a man's heart." This is part 2 of my Polymer Clay Mermaid in Resin tutorial. In this video, I show you how to make the body, the hair, the mermaid tail, and her resin-filled seashell bed. This is CertainlyCaroline with more Polymer Clay fairy tale nonsense. Create your own fairy tale world with my weekly miniature art tutorials. As always, a link to the supplies I used for this tutorial will be in the description below. I use my sketch to decide where to cut the wire for the armature. I wrap tinfoil around the wire, building upon the foil until I get the basic shape. I don't want any tinfoil on the skinniest areas like the neck and the forearms. White floral tape will help to keep the clay steady while I sculpt in the later stages. Throughout this process, I'm checking all dimensions to ensure I achieve the right thickness. I start applying sheets of clay onto the armature, one sheet next to another until the whole thing is covered, pinching the arms to shape the clay. I blend the clay sections together until they are seamless. I'm checking my sketch often during this process to see if I need more clay in some places. I add more clay as needed with my wooden tool, taking care not to trap air between the clay sheets. As I'm smoothing things out, I'm mindful of building up the clavicle bones by the neck. I continue to smooth the clay out with my thumb and pinch the arms into shape until I'm satisfied with the look, which may take a whole lot of smoothing. A simple indent with a wooden tool creates the jugular notch. I start with a scrap of clay and roll it in my hands to get the dirt out. Then I roll some good clay into a ball and I cut the ball in half and place them onto the doll. I use my wooden tool and my thumb to slide some of the clay up toward the clavicle bones. I brush out any remaining fingerprints or lint with some rubbing alcohol and then bake. I sand thoroughly and then blush the doll using Genesis heat set paints. I brush some flesh colors over crevices and then use Genesis glazing gel medium until I achieve a realistic, subtle warmth in the nooks and crannies. I paint her tail the color of the sea. Then she goes in the oven again to set the paint. Genesis paint cures in just a few minutes in a 250-degree oven. To add some depth, I wrap her tail in a layer of Primo translucent, which I flattened out with my clay machine, and then smoothed out onto the doll. Get as creative as you want with your mermaid tail. Maybe add some pectoral fins, a dorsal fin, or make the fluke flare out more. The fluke is the fin at the end of your mermaid's tail. The dorsal fin runs along the back of the tail and helps with balance. Pectoral fins run along the side, close to the hips, and help with sharp turns. Maybe look at some mermaid tails online to find something that inspires you. To make the scales, I press into the clay with a small speedball cutter. I add some texture to the fluke and then bake her again. Attaching the hands and the head. I start by cooling the hands in the refrigerator to stiffen them a little. I slide the hand onto the wire armature that's poking out. I usually need to add a little more clay around the wrist area. Then I smooth the new clay out, blending it into the hand and the arm. You'll need a little patience here because it takes a little time to get it looking just right. My sculpting movements are very refined at this point, since even the slightest amount of pressure can make a big difference. To attach the head, I wrap a bit of clay around the wire, slip the head on, then wrap some more clay around the neck and smooth it out. You'll want to add clay to give it the strength it needs, but not so much that she starts looking like a football player. Then I put her in her shell to make sure I like the position of her head, and I further smooth the clay out by brushing in rubbing alcohol. And into the oven she goes once again. If I fold the sanding paper over once, I can get between the fingers pretty well. Then I blush the hands and the neck with the Genesis paint. Decorating the tail. I gradually dry brush some paint up the tail so the tail will get lighter as it reaches the waist. And I bake her again just enough to cure the paint. She needs some dimension and shimmer on her tail, so I use an embossing gun to add some Angelina fibers. I get out the triple thick brush on gloss glaze. I apply a lot of this stuff all over the tail, and I dip my brush into some very fine glitter as I go. Some shaved glass glitter looks really cool on the fluke, and gloss does a great job gluing the glass glitter into place. Now let's make her hair, her crown, and her seashell bra. Fabri-fix or Fabri-tac is my favorite glue ever, and it works fabulously for doll hair. Here we have pink Tibetan lamb fur. I just cut about this much off and then I glue it onto her head. I just kind of push it on a little and smooth it out as I push. I start at the lower part of the head and work my way to the top of the head. Here's what I do for the top of the head. I simply cut off about this much and put it on a plastic bag. I put a good glop of glue on there and I just kind of move it around. Probably a lot of you would want to use like popsicle sticks or something, but I just kind of use my hands and then I let it dry completely. I cut off the glue so there's just a straight line of hair that's glued together. I flip it over and part it down the middle so that I can't see any of the glue. Then I add some new glue to the hair plug and sink it into the notch at the top of her head. Forgive me, I forgot to mention in the first video that I cut a little notch at the top of the head during the sculpting process, so I can sink the last hair plug into it. It works pretty well. I do some final gluing around the hairline and then gently lay the hair on top. Detailing the eyes. Here's some faux eyelashes. I'm shooting for a variety of lengths. The bottom lashes are going to be much shorter than the upper lashes, and the upper lashes gradually get longer. I apply each lash one by one. I put a small amount of super glue on a small section of the upper lid. I wet a pointy Q-tip thingy slightly to pick up one lash and then position it onto the lid. I usually apply 2 or 3 lashes before needing another spot of glue on another small section of the lid. Using triple thick again, I add gloss to her eyes, her lips, and her fingernails. And I use Fabri-fix to secure her crown and her seashell bra. Adding the resin. I fill any holes in the shell with some polymer clay. You can put the shell in the oven without any problems. After the shell cools, I mix the resin according to the package directions and pour it over the mermaid half buried in mini shells. Or if you prefer, you could mix some sand with glue and half bury your doll in that. Let it dry and then pour your resin over it. The mini shells or the sand mixture help to fill out the shell, so you need less of the resin. Use a straw to gently blow on the resin to get the air bubbles out. I had quite a large shell to fill, so I ended up using 6 ounces of resin. I poured in 3 ounces of resin and let it sit for 4 hours. Then I added the starfish and a few more shells and poured in another 3 ounces. I wanted the starfish submerged but closer to the surface than the mini shells. I want to thank Apryl Jensen, a very talented doll maker and teacher who has been an inspiration to me. Like this video if you liked it, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to my strange little world of polymer clay fairy tales.